Now, it's May Day or Workers' Day or International Labour Day, call it what you will. It's a day that's supposed to honour the contributions of workers across the world. But here in Nigeria, as the country marks the day, the haunting spectre of unprecedented inflationary pressures and a punishing cost of living crisis that's impoverished many workers dominates the discussion. So this year's traditional workers' rally carries a distinct whiff of the harshest living conditions in 3 decades, with Nigerian workers grappling with an inflation rate of more than 33%, a weakened currency, rising electricity tariffs, and higher fuel costs. In the face of these grim statistics, the government of President Tinubu announced on Tuesday that it was opting for a 35% wage increase for workers, backdated to January. But ask any worker and they'll tell you that this is barely enough, because in real terms, given the pressure of inflation, the pay increase for workers means that salaries stay roughly the same. And above inflation salary increases simply cannot materialize because, let's face it, the government can barely fund its own expenditure. So sadly, depressingly, that is the backdrop for this year's Labour Day celebration.
Our nation faces escalating poverty, dwindling opportunities, and widespread disillusionment. Genuine businesses struggle. Unemployment soars, and the government remains indifferent. However, there is hope if the government reevaluates its policies, prioritizes the welfare of its people, and supports local industries. We demand an end to disastrous policies like excessive borrowing and corruption. We need transparency in governance and accountability for public funds.
We took office at a time many nations, including ours, were experiencing daunting social, political, and developmental challenges. Yet we are resolute in confronting these obstacles head-on. The scourge of criminality, from banditry to kidnapping, and the Palmer-Harder crisis alongside terrorism, continues to afflict our nation despite the tireless efforts of our armed forces. We are aware of the toll this takes on our economy, and I assure you, we are fully committed to tackling these security challenges. You will recall that on January 30, 2024, the federal government convened a 37-member tripartite committee on minimum wage. The committee's mandate was to provide counsel and suggest a national minimum wage that aligns with our current economic conditions. Since then, the committee, in collaboration with labor leaders, has been diligently working towards proposing a new national minimum wage. Unfortunately, despite concerted efforts, the committee was unable to reach a consensus at its last meeting. These shall be resolved soon, and I assure you that your days of worrying are over.
The Nigerian vice president there, and before him, the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from our studios in Lagos by the development economist and investment banking executive, Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, and here in Abuja by the development expert and business and economic analyst, Dr. Raimi, who's also a chieftain of the ruling APC party. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and happy Labour Day, as they say. Let me start with you, Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. In light of everything you've seen and heard and analysed and assessed with regard to the Nigerian economy in the last year or so, how would you rate the condition of the Nigerian worker under the Tinubu administration?
Charles, thanks for having me. When we talk about Nigerian workers, let us not make the mistake of restricting it to less than 2 million as civil servants in Nigeria who are also part of the public service, including the elected and appointed political office holders. When we talk about workers in Nigeria, we're talking about 120 million adult working population in Nigeria, including you and I. And there is no mistaking it that it has been very tasking. It's been a tough year in Nigeria. People are suffering. And if you look at the numbers clearly, the World Bank poverty threshold is at $64.50, which is 77,500 naira by the current foreign exchange rate. That simply means anybody earning less than $7,500 is within the poverty threshold as defined by the World Bank Poverty Index. So basically, if you are to look at it and juxtapose it with the report of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, you will see clearly that over 197 million Nigerians out of a purported population of 217 million Nigerians are actually poor, miserable, dehumanized, and suffering. So beyond the public office workers, 120 million Nigerians are also celebrating today in gloomy environment and atmosphere. And based on what they announced, minimum wage of 35% increase, which put at about 40,000 naira per month, it does not cut it. The average Nigerian should be able to earn minimum wage, both in the public and private sector, of nothing less than 120,000 if we were to derive it scientifically. And I will give you my reasons. In 2011, when the minimum wage was 18,000, it was dollar equivalent $116. In 2018, when Buhari moved it to 30,000, dollar equivalent was $83. If you marry the two figures and divide it by 2, we have $99.5. So if you are to use the current exchange rate, minimum wage should be 120,000 naira. Then even if you use our GDP per capita, it were projected to have a halved GDP of about $252 billion. If you are to use the current exchange rate of 1,200, GDP per capita of the average Nigerian, that's our productivity, is about $1,160. That should come to about 116,000 naira per month as minimum wage. So basically, scientifically, productively, Nigerians we are not productive across every strata of the economy. And that is why we should all look back and ask ourselves questions. When we talk about government, all of us are part of government. Those in government did not come into government from the moon. We are practicing democracy. It's not like with a military junta that shot itself into power. So every one of us is collectively responsible for where we are today, and we should introspectively look inward and look into the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we not doing right individually and collectively?
That's a good point, and that's a good, I mean, I suppose the idea of Labor Day is not just to celebrate, but also to reflect. And let me come to you, Dr. Taofiq Raimi. Thank you for your patience, and might I implore the both of you to try and keep your answers reasonably short. You obviously have a lot of things to say, and we would very much like to hear them, but we also have got to keep time in mind. And Dr. Raimi, it would not, just listening to Dr. Obiaraeri there, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the Nigerian economy is struggling to survive as the country marks this year's sort of Labor Day. I mean, and for workers, as he said, things are looking particularly grim. So in that context, how do you view the salary increases that have been announced by the Tinubu government, bearing in mind that you are an APC chieftain?
Okay, thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, everyone. Let me join our president, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, to congratulate all workers, Nigeria workers, on today's celebration. We have every cause to celebrate and to appreciate that we are almost a year into a new administration, and this is the first Workers' Day during this current regime. I quite understand that economically things have been very tight, and I want to say that even the president of our nation is a sincere leader. Just about 2 days ago, he also acknowledged that, yes, that's in Saudi Arabia, during the World Economic Forum. He acknowledged that there have been difficult decisions that have been made since he came into power, but they are very necessary. He talked about oil subsidy removal. He equally talked about floating of the currencies. And he acknowledged that these two double hedge problem have actually affected the lives of all Nigerians, not just the workers. So I quite agree that the current increase, which has been announced by the federal government, yeah, is a step in the right direction. Could it be more? Yes. But I can assure you that what the government of the president is doing is not just to increase the face value of take-home pay of our workers. There are other incentives that the government is preparing within the Renew Hope agenda. You will recall that there is an issue of how to help our workers to earn incentives in housing, how to also ease transportation problem, and several other things that government are preparing to cushion the effect of what we are currently experiencing. So for me, government is a truthful one, which that is trying to ensuring that whatever is promised will not just be like what happened in 2018, as you will recall, that some state governments even declined to pay the minimum wage. So why should we promise what we cannot do? So I want to believe that is a good place to start. There will be other incentives that government is offering workers.
Right.
And I believe definitely things can only look better for Nigeria moving forward.
And of course, keeping in mind that in 2018, it was an APC government that was in office, and today it is an APC government that is in office. Nevertheless, Dr. Obiaraeri, you were talking earlier about the amount of money that people are actually going to be getting, the breakdown. The lowest paid worker will now earn something like 37,500 Naira monthly, and the increase covering all sort of federal employees and so on. And as you said, when you measure it against the rate of inflation, it's not going to make much of a difference. Now, the government is separately negotiating a new national monthly minimum wage with the unions. They're asking for something like more than 600,000 Naira in that review. I mean, is that something that you think is completely and utterly unrealistic in the current sort of economic temperature, given that the government can hardly pay its own bills?
Charles, it's not just unreasonable, it's unrealistic, it's very insensitive of the Nigerian Labour Congress to be asking for minimum wage of 600,000. Charles, I've just given you the figures. Productivity-wise, GDP per capita, the productivity of the average Nigerian is rated is today at $1,160. If we are to pay every Nigerian based on our productivity, nobody in Nigeria should collect anything more than 116,000 Naira as minimum wage. Look at South Africa. We always compare ourselves as, oh, see South Africa. In South Africa, minimum wage is about $320,000. But the GDP per capita of the South Africans on a monthly basis is about 667,000 Naira. That is GDP per capita of $675 compared to that of Nigeria. So the average South African can demand for minimum wage of 320,000 Naira a month, and it will be justified based on their productivity. I ask this question. Every one of us should look inward and reflect. And NLC itself have no reason and basis to even make such outrageous demand. I listened to Joe Ajero, the NLC chairman, talking about corruption, talking about inefficiencies. But there is nothing that the political office holders can do without the connivance of those in the public service. I give you an example. Over the last 10 years, we have wasted tens of trillions of Naira on subsidies. We have squandered trillions of naira on turnaround maintenance program of the refineries. Today, we are not refining anything. Who are those that work in those refineries? They are members of NLC, they are members of the TUC. And I ask this question: if those refineries are owned by any of the leadership of NLC as a private refinery, how many of them will keep on paying salaries and wages and allowances? I saw the report of the other time where they spent over 120 billion naira as overhead and salaries in those refineries. How many of them, as owners of those refineries, if it's under private sector capacity, will be paying salaries for 8 years, allowance and bonuses, without those refineries working? They will have laid off everybody. And we need to ask questions. Nigeria is for all of us. There is no way the public office holders can be corrupt or participate in any form of corruption if the civil servants do not hold them accountable. And that is why NLC and TUC, be without grandstanding, should look inward. They should also begin to do some introspection. They should be able to ask themselves, how come we squandered trillions of naira, squandered tens of billions of dollars, the refineries are not working? And I'll give you an example. Have you seen the NNPC report of January and February? $2.16 billion wasted on import of white petroleum PMS at an average consumption of 61 million liters per day. We should put the presidency on inquiry, because after the subsidy was removed, we were told that consumption came down to 43 million liters a day. How did the volume go up to 61 million liters a day? People should begin to answer questions. Presidency should begin. Let me tell you this. If the presidency could set up a special investigation into CBN and unearth the kind of cankerworm that are there, CBN is more professionally run than the NNPC and Petroleum Ministry and other agencies within the oil and gas sector. And the presidency should also set up an inquest to find out why the refineries are not working. NLC should set up inquest. TU set up inquest. They should begin to ask questions. How come this refineries? We were told by December it will work. It has not worked. March, it has not worked. We are in May. The refineries are not producing anything. For us to be a productive economy where minimum wage of 300,000 naira a month is paid, each and every one of us must be productive, sincerely and honestly productive. And I don't think that is the issue, and that is what is happening today in Nigeria.
Those are very legitimate, very important questions that you raise, and I hope the relevant authorities are listening to this conversation. I mean, we have Dr. Taofiq Raimi, who is, of course, a member of the APC, and is an economist and presumably engages in some kind of economic discussion with his chums in the APC. Let me ask you this, Dr. Raimi, in light of what we just heard about the minimum wage that Labour are asking for, the Labour unions, does it look, in your assessment, like organised Labour is cooperating more with government these days, or the government cooperating more with them, or is the relationship between the two sides still as adversarial as ever?
Okay, well, what I would advocate is collaboration between the Nigerian government and then the organized labor. You see, I've always watched, when you look at different kind of diversionary tactics by the Nigerian labor over the years, somehow you want to think whether they are actually Nigeria Labour Congress and not Nigeria Lazy Congress. I come up with the Nigeria Lazy Congress when you see every year, year in, year out, in several protests, agitations, and not focusing on productivity, just like my other colleague in your Lagos station had mentioned. The relationship between government and the Labour Congress supposed to be collaborative in a way that government plans and programs and policies are understood and they put in their best towards generating the revenue that we require. There are two things that we can do during this kind of economic slowdown that we have found ourselves over time. Is either we increase our revenue, which is what I would advocate, as well as decrease our expenditure. How do we do this? If we have the labor group that are not supporting the government of the day, as some people have argued in the past years. So for now, I want to tell you, Charles, that government at the federal level, and I believe also at the state level, need to work in harmony with the labor, because without them, the activity and program of government cannot be achieved. I also want to call on the labor also not to constitute themselves to an opposition, like I've said severally, thinking that if they down to the cost of government will not move. It will be like a morning rain that doesn't favor anybody. If you decide to frustrate the program and policies of government, how would the government will be able to pay? Even if government decide to pay 100,000 and there is no enough revenue to be able to meet this, it will be very impossible. So the idea of the president is that labor should work together in collaboration with the government in order that we can increase our revenue. We can also cut down on waste. You will notice that in recent, about a few weeks back, government, the federal government particularly, have merged some agencies of government together in order to increase efficiency, in order to reduce waste, in order to also increase, make available enough money that will be used towards the development of our economy and the country at large. So I would just appeal to the Labour Congress to ensuring that they give the necessary support across the spectrum towards the development of our country economically and in other areas. And in the end, we are going to have the very best for everybody.
Right. Well, Dr. Obiaraeri, I mean, in Lagos, you're obviously listening to that. I mean, beyond sort of the labor unions and so on, the primary responsibility for getting the economy kick-started and ticking along is of course the government's. I mean, against the rather gloomy backdrop that you have painted for us, although a very realistic backdrop, do you think that the measures being introduced by the Tinubu government are working? Because inflation has been steadily increasing, and that upward trend is continuing also with food inflation and things like fuel and electricity costs.
Charles, there is a mistake we make when we look at the policies and the programs that the current government had put in place. Charles, the two major programs and policies of this government in terms of pronouncement were spot on. Removal of petroleum subsidy was the best thing that the government did. Of course, we are still paying subsidy. We have paid almost about 8 trillion naira, which was caused by the devaluation of the naira. The issue of the margin of the foreign exchange market rates was also spot on. Now, the problem was not with the pronouncement. The problem was with the actions after the pronouncement. I give you an example. Charles, there is no country in the whole world that does not manage its currencies and its exchange rate. But you manage from a position of strength. We have always managed our naira. And what is our major foreign exchange earner? The crude oil. Between 2002 to 2015, we are managing it. Between 1999 to 2015, naira lost only 111 naira because we had huge dollar inflow coming from the crude oil receipts. And therefore, we had more forex earning than forex expenses. We even had more imports then. What is the problem with what happened over the last 9 months? Because our crude oil revenue is not coming in because of inefficiency, because of thefts. And who are those responsible? Beyond government, we have the military who are supposed to protect our oil assets. We have those in NNPC, NNPDRA, and the refineries are supposed to make those refineries work. NLC members and TUC members. Let me tell you something that worries me. If Nigeria is a company, all of us citizens are shareholders. The president and the executive members and National Assembly are the board and management that should be responsible and answerable to us. And of course, the president being the CEO, what will he do if you give an asset for a people to manage over 5 years? They lost, after spending 16 trillion that they could not fix the refineries. Every year we lose about $22 billion. Output is down to about 1.4 million barrels a day, down from a height of 2.6 million barrels, even 2.8 million barrels in 2010. If Nigeria was to be run efficiently and productively, if I, as Mr. President, I will have fired everybody within the department, within the parastatals, within the agencies who could not do their work. I ask this question: if those refineries were owned by you or me, somebody cannot work in my refinery for 8 years, drawing salaries and allowances, and then no productivity, and I will not fire him. Somebody cannot claim to be a GMD of my organization. Every day he reports to me, oh, Oga, we are losing $1.9 billion every month. We are losing $22 billion every year. Oga, we can't produce 2.5 million barrels. And the person will still be there. It's not possible. I will fire him. You cannot come and tell me I spent $1.5 billion of shareholders' fund to fix a refinery that was built in 3 years. And in 5 years, you cannot repair those refineries. And you are still telling me stories, rolling the can down the road. I will fire you. The problem we have in the public sector are lack of consequences. NLC and Nigerian workers are not victims. They are part of the collective problem. A majority of us in Nigeria as citizens are also part of the problem. When we cannot look the powers and the authorities in the eye and tell them the truth, when the day we stop worshiping incompetent rulers, the day we start asking the critical questions, demanding for accountability and transparency, that is the day Nigeria will work. But as long as majority of us are still steeped and soaked into our ethno-religious proclivities, this country will not work. This country can only work when each and every one of us put our hands in the plow, right, and become productive, indeed, and become honest, and become sincere.
Indeed. And let me come to you, Dr. Taofiq Raimi, and I'm coming to you not as a politician now, but as an economist. In light of everything that we've been discussing so far, I would like you to wear your economic hat. Are you seeing any signs at all that President Tinubu's administration is starting to sort out Nigeria's economy after nearly 1 year in office?
Yes, of course. You see, the point at which the president inherited this economy, as we know, I want to give you a picture of what it is.
Briefly, because we're almost out of time.
It's like a construction site that has gully, that has pitfall. You first of all have to fill in the gully before you can even think of any new construction work to be done. You have to fill in layers, you have to backfill, and you have to get to the ground zero. And before you begin, the kind of foundation you will have to put cannot be the kind of ordinary economic foundation that you can run when there is no problem. The problem we are having is that the problem has been caused over a long years, as we all are aware. The president is sorting out all these issues, and I believe in the next couple of months, and definitely before the end of this current administration, we are going to rejoice that we have a president that knows what he wants to do, is passionate about it, and he will get us out of the wood.
Okay, well, I have to admit that you do have a point there, because a lot of people make the argument that what we're seeing now is the result of cumulative problems in the Nigerian economy that has happened over a long period of time. But I want to thank both of you very much indeed. Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri is a development economist and investment banking executive. He was talking to me on the line there from Lagos. And here in Abuja, the development expert and business and economic analyst, Dr. Taofiq Raimi. Thank you very much indeed to both of you.